Hello, and welcome to the first episode of Arbiter of Worlds. This is not only the first episode, it's my first time filming myself on YouTube. I've been told by experts that your first 50 videos on YouTube are always terrible. I'm going to try to become less terrible as quickly as I can, but the only way to level up is to go into the dungeon, so as to speak. As you can see, I've got a kind of a dungeon-themed backdrop to keep me in the right mindset as I level up. So this channel is going to be about how to become a better game master. Whether you've played a tabletop role-playing game or not, you probably are familiar with the concept of the game master or dungeon master or DM. They're sometimes also called judges, referees, storytellers, whatever they're called. Game masters are these party souls who organize the play group, they run the campaign, they judge the sessions. And before they turned to the dark side, Wizards of the Coast used to consider DMs their lifeblood. They said, you learn D&D because somebody teaches you how to play, and that somebody is usually a dungeon master. Now, there's an old saying, who watches the watchman? I ask, who teaches the GM how to GM? And generally the answer is nobody. And that's a problem. I've long ago came to the conclusion that one of the major obstacles impeding the spread of the tabletop hobby is the lack of game masters. It's been my experience that most people who like games, given the chance, will participate in a tabletop RPG. And once they start participating, they'll continue to enjoy it. But most people don't ever even get to try an RPG simply because there's this worldwide shortage of game masters. So as a tabletop patriot, I ask not what RPGs can do for me. I ask what I can do for RPGs. And this YouTube channel is part of my answer. It's my guidance on how to run your own game. I'm going to teach the teachers so that they can go forth and start their own campaigns and spread the tabletop RPG pastime. So I'm going to teach you to be a judge, a storyteller, an adversary, and a world builder. What I call overall an arbiter of worlds. Now, I'm primarily going to focus my attention on the fantasy genre when I chat. Why? Well, fantasy is the most popular genre. Fantasy games like Dungeons & Dragons and Pathfinder are almost everybody's introduction to the hobby. It's also my favorite genre. It's the one I've worked in most often professionally as the designer and publisher of the Adventure Conquer King system. That's not to say that a lot of the discussion in this channel won't apply to other genres of tabletop RPG, science fiction, post-apocalyptic, horror, superheroes. I have a superhero game. I'm going to definitely offer suggestions about how to use those ideas in other genres. It's just not the primary lens we're going to be viewing the subject through. And to kick off episode 1, I want to start with the foundation of game mastering, which is not what most people think it is. So, as I said above, a GM has many responsibilities, and those range from teaching new players to organizing the group, judging the sessions, and it's this multifaceted role of the GM is precisely what makes it so intimidating for new entrants. There's just not that many people who feel comfortable organizing what is basically a social club, doing improvisational acting, being a rules lawyer, being a story writer, and so on. Many roles of the GM have also contributed to these many-fold names for the same job. And one of the common names for a GM? Storyteller. And that's a legacy of White Wolf's storyteller RPG system. And I think White Wolf did the profession of game master a really grievous injury when it said that a person running one of their popular games was called a storyteller. It's this name that suggests that your primary role is telling a story. And this mantra created an entire generation of gamers who sneered at preparation, world building, judging, game mechanics, and who viewed their chief job as improvisational literature. So the result is you get amateur theater, and at worst you get entire groups turned off by a not game with no rules. Now, storytelling is a function of the game master, and it's the one most people think they're signing up to fill. But it's actually just one of several functions, and in many ways, I consider it to be the least important, and it's the farthest from the foundation of the GM role. So if not storytelling, you ask, what lies at the essence of being a game master? Role-playing games descended from miniature wargaming. Miniature wargames are competitive simulations. Generally you've got like two opposed teams, Germany and Russia in World War II. But most miniature wargames also have a participant called a judge or a referee. And what's the role of the judge in a miniature wargame? Well, one is to choose or create the scenario that the other players will complete within. 2, to help explain, teach, and enforce the rules. 3, to prevent cheating and keep the players honest. 4, to rule on gray areas not covered by rules. And 5, to control the flow of information to permit, fog of war. Now, note what's absent from the role of miniature war games judge. And, the GM is often perceived as the adversary. You hear about the killer GMs. But a miniature games judge wasn't responsible for playing the adversary. He was a neutral referee between the actual adversaries, which was the players. And so the first role-playing games, the GM was not responsible for playing the adversaries either. In David Wellesley's Bronstein, the players were battling amongst themselves. In Dave Arneson's Blackmore campaign, the players were initially pitted against each other. One of them was a vampire named Sir Fang, another was a cleric, and Arneson served as the arbiter. Nor was the miniature wargame judge responsible for telling a story. A story might emerge over the course of a miniature wargame, but it did so by happenstance as a result of the unfolding of the game. And when the game was over, you could have a story. Really what you'd have is a fictional military history that could be written up. But the judge didn't write it up in advance or adjust the course of the game to have one side win or lose based on the plot. And, likewise, in early tabletop RPGs, the judges did not have a story for their game. They had a setting, they had a set of rules, the outcome was then left up to the players. The original RPG, Braunstein, which preceded D&D by many years, was explicitly an open-ended wargame, and it ended up going in directions its creator never foresaw. So the foundation and the first function of the GM was judge, And so I think if you show me a player who knows the rules, who can teach the rules to others, is comfortable making rulings in gray areas, and can control information flow between the players as necessary, that player is on his way to being a great game master. Now, there are 3 other functions. The second function is world builder, which is a function that also arose out of the wargame judging of choose or create the scenario, and expanded over time as the games became richer and more detailed. The other 2 I've already mentioned as ancillary, and they're the adversary and the storyteller. And we're going to dive into all of these more in our next episode. For now, we're going to wrap it up. If you've enjoyed this introductory video, please hit the like and subscribe buttons, press the bell so you get notified when I update this channel. If you're already hating everything I have to say, please be sure to subscribe anyway so you can hate watch. I need the views either way. That's all for now. Game on.